Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm going to be continuing in this video my series on C.M. Kornbluth with his third published story titled Stepsons of Mars. Stepsons of Mars is a novelette published in Astonishing Stories magazine, which was being edited by Frederick Pohl. In the April 1940 issue, Kornbluth wrote it with Richard Wilson, who was another prominent science fiction author of the day, or was to become another prominent science fiction author, and Dirk Wiley, who was a prominent science fiction fan. Didn't do much professional writing, but he was very active in fandom back then. And the three of them published this story under the pseudonym of Ivar Towers. Now, the basic story is you got two guys. They're on Mars, okay? They're not the best characters. They do things that get themselves into trouble from time to time. And well, they weren't originally together. They just happen to be in the same place at the same time when the authorities catch up with both of them and arrest them and give them a choice of being in the army, or I forget what the other choice was, but it was worse. So they choose to join the army. And the army is called something else on Mars, but it is the army. There are Martians living on Mars. When man first came to Mars, and this is all backstory explained in the story, when man first came to Mars, the Martians fought the humans and tried to get the humans to leave the planet. But the humans discovered a crystal which has a property of curing cancer. So the humans did not want to leave. They wanted to stay. They wanted to mine this crystal, bring it back to Earth. So they fought really hard against the Martians and pushed the Martians back. The Martians retreated into their cities, into the desert, and for a while they were not heard from at all. So the humans keep up the army, and Red and Sloan, they go through their basic training and they get into the army, and they're sent out with their whole unit to try and find the Martians, and they do. And the Martians decide to come back out of hiding and start fighting once again. I'm going to spoil the hell out of this one. I'm going to say that they defeat the Martians by discovering that the Martians like alcohol, and they got plenty of alcohol. So they start getting the Martians drunk. And that gets the Martians to stop fighting as long as they keep supplying them with alcohol. The story is meant to be a comedy. The comedy is kind of 1940s Abbott and Costello level, except I think Abbott and Costello is funnier. This story is, it might have been funny in its day, but today it can only be seen as tragic because it makes fun of a tragic situation of how we treated the American Indians and just laughs at it. The Martians are called greenies, and I mean the attitudes in this towards the Martians are just so totally racist. So the story is actually quite offensive to those of us living today, and even if you don't take offense at all that, the story just isn't well written. I mean, this is only C.M. Kornbluth's third work. It was a very early work for Richard Wilson. Dirk Wiley did very little professional publishing. He mostly just wrote for fanzines. And this story comes off sounding a lot like fan fiction, to the point where some of the names of characters in the story are Lowndes, referring to Robert A.W. Lowndes, Bradbury, referring to Ray Bradbury, and Wiley, of course, refers to Dirk Wiley, the third writer of this story. Isaac Asimov at this time, 1939, 1940, was writing stories that were criticizing racist attitudes, stories like The Weapon Too Dreadful to Use. I think Kornbluth, Wilson, and Wiley should have thought for an extra 5 minutes about this story and chosen some way to write the story where it wouldn't be just downright offensive and racist. Okay. So my final analysis of this is to say it's not recommended. It's amateurish. It's um, childish. It's racist. It's it's every criticism that people level against old time science fiction, which I'm constantly saying, but look, this isn't like that. Sorry, this story is all that and more. Okay. Um, this is what people are talking about when they say that classic science fiction is unreadable. This is the kind of story that they're referring to. So I wouldn't even recommend this to a Kornbluth completist or a Richard Wilson completist or anybody that just loves golden age science fiction. This is just a bad story. It shouldn't have been published. Frederick Pohl should have known better than to use it. Well, he was starting up Astonishing Stories and some other magazines all at the same time at this time, and he was probably a little pressed to find affordable fiction. I know he was going to his friends and begging for stories for on the cheap, and so they were sending him all their rejected stories. Everything that John Campbell didn't want, they were sending to Fred Pohl, and he was publishing it. So, I mean, he probably needed it to fill the magazine, but still, he could have gone back and said, guys, please, can you at least rewrite the ending? You know, but he didn't. So lots of blame to go around on this one. It's not a good story, not recommended. I suggest you skip this one in your research of classic science fiction. One thing I gotta insert here that is good about Stepsons of Mars is the illustrations that went with it. There are two of them, if I recall correctly. They're early illustrations by Hannes Bach, who is one of the best illustrators of the 1940s, 1950s. An amazing illustrator. His illustrations for Stepsons of Mars are awesome. They are truly awesome. Definitely among my favorites. I read Stepsons of Mars only in a PDF of Astonishing Stories. I do not have a physical copy of the magazine. I couldn't get one. The story hasn't been anthologized, so I was reading it in the PDF of that was made from the actual magazine issue, and so it has the Hannes Bach artwork in it. And I've seen Hannes Bach plenty of times, but never had seen these before. And I know 1940 was the start of Bach's career. He had just started with, he had done a lot of work for Ray Bradbury, and Ray Bradbury actually was going around to editors pushing Hannes Bach's work. And I hope I'm not murdering his name. I have no clue how it really should be pronounced. I've only seen it in print. I've never heard it said before. So I'm probably destroying it. Anyway, the illustrations are great. I'll put them up here. Here's the Hannes Bach illustrations from Stepsons of Mars, which throw away the story, keep the artwork. Brilliant artwork. This is what I love about science fiction illustration. This is why I love science fiction illustration, is works like this. Amazing, amazing stuff. Makes it worth at least finding this issue of Astonishing and opening up just to look at this artwork. And like I say, don't bother reading the story. But Kornbluth would go on to write a lot of excellent stories, like, some in collaboration with Frederick Pohl, like The Space Merchants. And one coming up in a little while, I'm going to do Outpost Mars, which he wrote with Judith Merrill. It's a whole novel that he wrote with Judith Merrill in 1951. That's coming up on my list. The next C.M. Kornbluth in order of publication will be King Cole of Pluto. The title doesn't sound too promising, but we will get to some good stories. I promise you that. So come on back for more Sam Kornbluth and everybody else I talk about here on Telltale Books.